I guess we're good to go. Council, fellow.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call this Finance Committee meeting of Tuesday, February 3 to order. I'd like to begin with the acknowledgement. The town of Smithers acknowledges the Gidimt'en clan and the Wet'suwet'en people on whose unceded traditional territory we live, work, and play. The public is notified that the meeting is being recorded and webcast globally, a notice of which has been placed on the bulletin board outside council chambers. And council, we have an agenda in front of us. Councillor Elliott, all in favor? Okay, and that carries unanimously. And council, just for your information, we are going to begin tonight with Mr. Welsh walking us through a PowerPoint presentation, and then at the end of that PowerPoint presentation, we'll come back to the consolidated budget. Mr. Welsh.
Thank you very much, Chair Bukema. Well, hello everyone again. Members of the public, members online, council and staff. We're going through our 2026 consolidated budget, which builds off the budget principles we talked, along with the operational budget and the capital budget. This is all kind of put together. So consolidated budget and draft financial five-year plan is prepared. Comparing it to the 2025 one, we're looking at about a $54 million budget, along with $54 million in expenses. Big drop, you'd be kind of wondering why. A lot of that was the advance of RBA funds in 2025 and some carry forward capital projects from 2025 to 2026. Forecasted property tax increases. I'd like to show this as we kind of talk through everything. Obviously, the figures presented are preliminary and for discussion purposes now. Final rates will be determined through council and direction during the financial plan and budget process. But the budget you see here forecasts a 4.37% property tax increase. Main drivers is generally inflation, a reserve transfer increase, RCMP funding, visitor information center cost increases, some increased cost of running the library that was discussed at the operational budget meeting and offset a little bit by some revenue increases due to just general inflationary and updates in our fees and charges. Along with this, I'm kind of using general forecasted property tax increases going through. At the capital budget meeting, we talked about a model looking at the library, and another option I brought to the attention. We'll kind of look at option one and option going two. And those are the general implications of property taxes forecasted going through the financial plan proposed. Thank you. First thing, what was on the budget principles that we talked about and I really bring to attention is the Smithers Regional Airport and financial sustainability. The airport continues to experience a structural operating deficit. Operating costs remain largely fixed and continue to rise. If this continues, an ongoing subsidy from general taxation is required. Without policy adjustments, a structural gap will persist. As we noted in the airport report and before, the airport doesn't generate a sustainable cash from operation. And if this continues, we're also expecting a large decrease in revenue in 2026. So if no additional revenue sources are identified, we're going to have to subsidize the airport, and the cost will be about $380,000 annually. And if this hits around 2027, we'll be looking at a 7.39% property tax increase. Another big thing we talked about the capital budget in recreational culture is the library project. The 2026 phase, currently in the budget, we have the design phase, which is architectural design and costing. This is funded from existing reserves, and this positions the town for construction readiness. This phase does not require borrowing. The next part of it is the library construction renovation. As per the information provided to council, the estimated construction cost is $3 million. With the purchase of this, there aren't available reserves to fully fund construction. We will require direction from council how to determine the long-term debt and tax profile for this project. We proposed a couple options: long-term debt, which is currently the model used in my 2026 budget. We could also use RBA funding. A hybrid model, which I propose, is attached in option one. It looks at a 50-50 debt and RBA split. And another option is to defer the project to 2027. We'll talk about this at the very end. Council direction is required to determine the preferred financing model. Each option prevents different trade-offs related to taxation, debt levels, reserve balances, and long-term financial flexibility. Another big option coming up and this is new from the capital budget, is we're required to do a new fire and rescue truck, which for Chief DeBreeze, we're required to have that by 2028. And the procurement process normally takes about a year or so. So the current budget includes $120,000 deposit, and then the remaining $930,000 will be financed over, and then another $150,000, and then the remaining will be financed over 10 years. And that requires about $114 in annual payments. This is currently the model I have factored in the long-term financial plan. Also noted it in the year of purchasing, and I had $150,000 funded out of the fire reserve. One option I'm proposing is, next slide, please, is looking at funding the truck with RBA funds. Using up to 1.2 million to fund with RBA eliminates the need for debt financing. This will avoid drawdown of the fire equipment reserve, kind of strengthens the long-term reserve sustainability of the fire department. Limes RBA usage is core emergency structure infrastructure, which is kind of part of the RBA policy. Fire rescue, currently only town function that has not received RBA funding to date. This approach reduces long-term financial risk, eliminates debt exposure for this asset, and strengthens reserve capacity. And then it really pits off in 2023, taking this model. There's a previous fire truck purchase in 2024, which was financed with MFA equipment financing over 5 years. Part of this too is if I switch to this model, I'd look to just rejig a bit of the transfers to reserves. I'd be upping the machinery and equipment reserves to $550,000, and due to purchasing, that'd be annually. And if we purchase the fire truck with RBA funds, I can readjust some of the fire and rescue reserve transfers down from 485 in the current consolidated budget to 350. Once the current fire truck's paid off, this will really kind of put the fire department in a strong kind of place where we'll be building strong reserves, and future equipment can be fully paid for cash as opposed to financing. A lot of my focus of this budget is stabilizing core operations, addressing structural airport pressures, making strategic infrastructure investments, reducing long-term debt exposure where possible, strengthening reserve sustainability, ensuring fair and transparent use of RBA. And the 26 budgets focus on balancing service levels, infrastructure renewal, and long-term financial stability. Big thing to focus, we never really talk about, and I'd just like to bring to council's attention, is what we transfer to operating reserves every year. 2025 was a bit of a catch-up year with me kind of taking over partway through the year, balancing the budget. And we had some missed 2024 financing being caught up, but generally put about $113,000 into operating reserves. What else we had? $53,000 of that comes out of taxation, while the amount contributed to the Westink Community Forest is a direct transfer from the funding we get annually from the community forest. Big one too is our capital reserve transfers. This is how we pay and manage for capital assets. So a lot of this kind of breaks through, and the amount we kind of pay in every year is about $2 million. There's a bit of a forecast increase for the infrastructure transfer reserve and the financial plan I inherited. I'm maintaining that kind of going through. But we're looking at about $2.3 million going into the capital budget every year. The airport has a transfer to the infrastructure reserve, which comes from the airport improvement fee. That was $10 for every $30 collected. We reduced that with the new fees and charges bylaw going through, dropping that to $5 for every $30 collected due to the operating pressures in the airport, as it's currently not financially sustainable. So big kind of lot too, just again, I've included in the financial report is the kind of reserve forecast kind of seeing. At the beginning of 2025, we had about $27 million in reserves. 10 million of that is RBA funding. And as that kind of goes through down, we've kind of going down generally going through that. But I include that reserve forecasting because I think that's a really general thing to kind of watch, and how we kind of plan and manage to be prepared for future projects. The general surplus of the municipality was the ending of 2025 forecast for, about $2 million. And the end of 2026 is like the general surplus is looking to be about $1.6 million, which is kind of our contingency and kind of like general money in the pigging bank in the general fund. So big things we got to kind of talk about, if I go back to the slides, is the library. The purchase of the library needs to be financed. It's looking to be a cost of $3 million, and how we propose our funding that is one thing that needs to be addressed, as currently we do not have any money in the bank outside of RBA to finance this. Staff originally proposed using a 25-year debt financing, which works out to payments of about $207,000 a year annually to finance the service. And currently, then there'll also be the operational impacts of this, which we have yet to determine, knowing the future costs and service levels required by the library going forward. So this will be one thing I need kind of direction for going forward and how we want to kind of do this. This was one thing at the capital budget meeting was deferred to this to talk about how we'd like to address the library. Council, I'm looking for some direction or discussion.
Ms. LeBlanc, are you able to bring back the slide which has the 4 library options on it? There it is. Thank you. So council, we've got 4 options in front of us. You want to start us off? Mayor Atchell.
Thanks, Councillor Buchanan. I just have one question related to your last statement when you talked about the service levels. So one assumes that in 2027 in the operating budget, we'll see some adjustment to how we intend to operate the libraries. There'll be some approvals on potentially increased service so that we can anticipate that.
Correct. We have no direction on the level of service that the new library will acquire. So I've only kind of done the general updates based on the new items approved in the 2026 budget. Yes, that'll be a level needs to be determined once we also understand the full scope of the project.
Okay, thank you. So I missed the previous discussion, so I appreciate the opportunity to chime in now. I understand the reasons why we might do it any of those ways. I'm just going to speak to the RBA. And when communities lobbied for the RBA, we were talking about the need for support for core infrastructure. And some of the information that was provided to the province over years included things like water lines, sewer lines, failing infrastructure. And while the library fits within the uses of the RBA, we have spent some RBA already to purchase the building. And at this moment in time, I'm leaning toward the long-term financing. It spreads the cost of the library over users over time instead of being borne right now. And I think it's more in line with what we said were the needs that led to the RBA agreement. And we're partway through that agreement with an intention at the RBA committee and the steering committee to make a way forward to ensure that the current agreement becomes an enduring agreement. So part of our opportunity is to report back how we use the funds and that we're using it in line with the things that we said we needed during the period where we were advocating for it. So right now, I would say I'm not in favor of using any more RBA money on the building and rather going to the long-term debt. And Mr. Welsh, you gave me some information when we spoke about how the MFA financing works and what we would likely pay back over time if we in fact finance $3 million. And those terms are pretty favorable. So while we'll have annual payments over time, it's not an extraordinary amount that we're paying back, potentially.
You will be paying back a little less than $3 million, but you'll still be kind of paying the cost of the full $3 million over a period of time. The MFA program is neatly structured, which is coupon bonds, which is like they pay interest on it over the time, but require municipalities to do the principal payments to them over the period of the debt term, and then they reinvest it and money comes back on it. So you will see a little bit of the savings and you'll see it in our financial statements. It's called the actuarial adjustment. Yes, there'll be a little bit of savings like that, but we'll still be looking at payments of $207,000 for like about 25 years.
Okay, thanks for that. So there is some cost, of course. We're not going to get this for free. So I'll just sum up by saying for this particular subject that's in front of us, at this point, I'm supporting the long-term debt. Thanks.
Councillor Ray.
So I'm actually a fan of the hybrid model. Part of the problem is that we don't have the architect's estimates yet. Knowing the experience I've had with architects, if they said 3 million, there's going to be an option in there for 5, 6, maybe 7 million. There'll probably be a 3 million option. That'll probably be the lowest one. I hear what Mayor Atchell is saying about the RBA, but also what we asked for in the RBA was also, I believe the library is a core infrastructure. There's a building there. We're required to have a library. We have to fund the library. And the debt payments are going to put us right up against that ceiling for RDBN. And if we need more operational money to run the library in the new building, that's really going to put us all in a jam. I'm not a big believer in borrowing money when we already have money. I would prefer, if we do both of these things, we're still going to have $4 million at the end of the term, still in not the end of our term, the end of the term of the RBA in the financial budget. It still says, I think that's right. It's going to be 2.9 or something. So it's not 4, but it's still going to be a substantial amount. And I just don't, it may be a personal thing from how my life's gone, but I've seen how much money I wasted on interest. We see it with the provincial government. And I just think if we have that option, I think the hybrid's probably the best way to go. And if it comes in at under $3 million, I think we reduce the borrowing rather than reduce the RBA. I think the other thing this council needs to do, and I see Councillor Banster or former Councillor Banster in here, and when we built the second sheet of ice, former Councillor Banster made a challenge to the community to raise a certain amount of money towards the building. And I think in this case that we need to set, the Friends of the Library, always good help in past iterations of the library, have gone out to corporate sponsors. And because we didn't have a shovel-ready project, they got some kind of soft commitments. But I think if we have a shovel-ready project, we're going to do this, that I think that we should be looking at fundraising as much as we can. We can't put that in the budget because we're going to move forward with it. But I think the hybrid model, and then, when we get the options, if there's a $5 million option, I would be expecting that the community is raising the rest rather than the taxpayers.
Thanks, Councillor Ray. I believe Councillor Elliott was next.
Thank you, Chair Buchman. I support the hybrid model as well. I don't know, maybe Mr. Lawrence can answer this. As far as budgeting for big water sewer projects in the next couple of years, I know we have a limited time probably to spend the RBA money. Long term, will that money be there to do those projects? So that's part of my logic in spending it now. But I'll just if Ms. Lawrence has a moment to be able to answer that question.
Mr. Lawrence.
Thank you, Chair Buchman. To Councillor Elliott's question, absent Mr. Allen being here, we do have some RBA money earmarked already for some water and sanitary replacements. Those are the major ones that have been identified to date. We don't have any current information if RBA is coming back or not, but the things that are concerns to us have been earmarked.
Mr. Dewar.
Yeah, just elaborating on the statements of Mr. Lawrence. So when we look at RBA, it's one that certainly from the province and from the RBA advisory committee, what we're hearing is certainly act as if that is ongoing funding. And we have heard that commitment from individuals at the province as well, even though there's obviously uncertainty in terms of, having a 5-year term to the existing contract. And as we're all aware, there's, some financial challenges that likely our province or provincial government will face in the coming years. That being said, one of the big aspects that we've heard and one of the big pieces that we have to have a responsibility to fulfill is developing our asset management strategy. And while we do have presently many different plans that are kind of make part of an asset management strategy, pulling that all together and basically recognizing and fully identifying all the assets we do have, ground truthing the state of those assets, and then doing the long-term financial planning for those assets is really going to give us a much stronger vision of where those assets are and what we have to be doing to plan for that. And that's one that certainly I think not just the town of Smithers, but many other communities across BC, across our region, as well as across the nation are starting to recognize the challenges with asset management. current. And so when we do, and as we are moving through that process, we do anticipate, certainly there will be new priorities identified. And that's one that certainly we do anticipate as we bring our manager of engineering and asset leadership on, as we work with consultants to get a better understanding that there is going to be some future expenditures. And in terms of the RBA, and I'll certainly let the mayor correct me if I'm misspeaking to anything. What we have heard and what we've seen is we can put into reserves for future spending as well. So I think that there is going to be that aspect where we are going to see not only, future expenses, but we're going to identify more expenses than we're already aware of.
Thank you, Mr. Dewar. Councillor Raven.
So I would really like to thank Mayor Ashell for raising the historical place where RBA began. I think that is important to take pause and just think about that. Because I have to admit is I immediately did jump to the hybrid model when I read the report. So I do appreciate just understanding what the core use is meant to be. But while thinking about that, this is actually not the slide that's on my mind. The slide that's on my mind is the airport. Because with the projections there, it is concerning what we might have to raise just to keep our airport going. And kind of what really stood out to me is bullet 2 in the summary for option 1 on page 7 of 85 is this will cumulatively reduce property tax pressure by about 0.725% over 3 years compared to the 100% long-term financing. And I have to say is that plays into my decision to opt for the hybrid models, just being aware that we might have additional pressures coming up over the next few years. So I would support the hybrid model.
Councillor Leonard, did you have your hand up? I thought so.
I also support option 3, hybrid model, for all the reasons everybody else has said. And I think those councillors that were at the last meeting heard me challenge or comment that we should challenge the Friends of the Smithers Library to raise some money. I don't know what that looks like. But I also agree with Councillor Ray. It should be, I'm happy to have it be worded financing up to 1.5. But if it's less than that, or if it's more than that, it should be coming from community fundraising. And depending on how much they raise, it should come off long-term financing, because we just need to find a way to keep taxes low for our community.
Thank you, Councillor Leonard. Mayor Attrell.
Yeah, thanks. I can read where the table's going. So I'm just going to reiterate a couple of things about the RBA, and then it'll go how it goes. So we are, at the steering committee, and if people remember, the RBA represents Haida Gwaii to the other side of Vanderhoof. And it really was, the work that went into the RBA was about core infrastructure, the things that make communities unlivable. And that's when there aren't water systems and there aren't sewer systems. And it included a lot of imagery of failed pipes. And so I think that is what sort of took us over the line. Mr. Dewar is exactly right on what's contained within the document. You've all seen it and can refresh yourselves. So I think we're at a time now where at the steering committee, we're trying to make sure that we're telling the right story. And you can go on the website, the RBA website, and see what projects are being posted by communities, including ours. So this is something we can do with it. I just think it's really important for us to consider, are we spending the RBA in the way that is most beneficial, that meets the reasons why we applied for it in the first place or lobbied for it in the first place, as we work toward that enduring agreement. And there are a couple of other things in the community that we're not discussing tonight that will loom, that I double checked with Mr. Dewar, and I can't name some of these things that we would have dealt with in closed, where we are going to have some big projects that are going to need attention from council, and we haven't really worked our way through that at all. So we've got some big things hanging over us that we may wish we had funding for. Yeah, I think I'll probably hold it there. You can see where I think we need to make some sensible decisions on how we use that money. One of the things we did last year was Princess Street, which I think fit well. The water line, the CN water line extension fits well. So we have big projects as well that easily fit within the RBA model, and including some of the operational decisions that we're taking. At any rate, we'll report it back as best we can when the time comes.
Thank you, Mayor Attrell. Councillor Ray.
Yeah, not to belabor it too much, but I think the province itself, in how we're allowed and been directed to spend some of the RBA money, has gone away from that pipes and bricks and mortar as well. So I think the province has kind of signaled that, you know, the RBA can be more than just that. And I think we have discussed it wisely, and we, like you said, we have used it for a lot of projects that were really what we were looking for. So I don't think I mean, when you look at the savings over trying to build a $22 million library, which in the whole time I've been on council, there's never been any capital money for libraries. So I think we need to take advantage of what we can.
There was just one other comment. It was regarding whether or not we ought to have money left at the end of it. And I'll ask Mr. Dewar to pay attention to that. We have a committee meeting coming up fairly quickly. We can have money in reserves, but I would suggest we think about the needs that we have and allocate the money. This, you know, is not, the RBA fund is meant to support the needs we have. And so I think that's important planning as well, that we support the projects in the term of the RBA.
Thanks, Mayor Attrell. Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Chair Bukema. So I recognize I'm likely going to be outvoted, but just for the record, I'm not in support of doing the hybrid model. I would like to fully fund it through RBA, but I'm also not in support of $3 million. I'm a bit confused because when I look at that building, it's a relatively new building. It seems to be in great shape. I'm obviously not in construction, so maybe I'm out to lunch. But I think we have made a significant contribution in purchasing of the building already. And the reason why I'm not comfortable with even making a decision on up to $3 million in any model is we don't even know the outcomes in some of our long-term strategies. They're still coming back to this table for some of those high priority files like the airport and outcomes of the asset management plan. You know, I think about my son and future generations. It's currently unmanageable to pay the mortgage, to pay for food, to pay for my natural gas. And just recognizing that taxes are going to continue to be raised on all fronts. I'm not comfortable with making a decision that's going to impact future generations. And I just think that to say $3 million without having the architect come back and even give us any sort of insight into what the cost is actually going to be. I have a question through to Mr. Welsh. If we were to go with the RBA, would we have to make the decision to say it has to be $3 million, or could we wait until we got that projection back?
Maybe refer to Director LeBlanc on this one, but the one thing would be is allocating up to $3 million to fund this project. And once we get the needs assessment, detailed design done, we kind of determine exactly where to kind of go with this. But the one thing, just like the second sheet of ice, is if we're going to do this project, we might as well do it right and properly build it, because it's easier to do things once, set up and build it the proper way, than kind of do something in between and kind of never be fully stoked with the project you kind of developed. So the way I'd like to word this is, yes, up to $3 million, and depending with like up to 1.5 million in RBA or up to 1.5 million in long-term debt.
Go ahead, Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Chair Bukema. So just so I understand that 3 million, can you just give me an overview? Is that based on an assessment of offsite works, like some kind of assessment, just so I can understand just a little bit on where that number comes from?
Thank you, Councillor Patterson. I can answer that to the best of my ability from the information that the architects have given us. They have provided that number based on previous projects of similar sizes. Again, that is up to $3 million. The building is in good shape, but there is a lot of significant upgrades that need to be completed in order for it to be a usable public space, like accessible washrooms, just entrances, everything like that. A lot goes into it. That might not be glamorous, but to get it up to a usable public space.
Thanks, Ms. LeBlanc. Mr. Dewar.
Yeah, and just building on the comments of my colleagues, certainly I think there's a lot of unknowns, but one of the responsibilities of local government is to develop a 5-year financial plan outlining what we anticipate our costs being, not just for the 2026 season, but or 2026 calendar year, but also for the upcoming 5 years. And so with that, reasonably speaking, we should be budgeting according to what we anticipate the costs and for projects to be. Certainly things do change. And with this one, there is a lot of ground truthing that will have to happen in terms of what actually comes back from the architects. And that's certainly one that will be brought back to council for consideration before any final investment. But certainly it is prudent as part of this budget process to be allocating money towards something that we do anticipate will be in the realm of a $3 million cost.
Thanks, Mr. Dewar. I think I've been persuaded too that the hybrid model is probably the way to go. Option 4, I definitely do not want to see happen. I think the members of our community saw us buy a building with the intention of turning it into a library, and I think that's what they're wanting to see. So I think we need to make a decision as to how we're going to fund the 3 million so that we can get going on the project. Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Chair Bukima. If we went with the hybrid model for financing, if through conversations around asset management planning, for example, we identify a large project that needs to be funded, are we now tapped out as far as how much we can borrow over a certain time period?
Mr. Welsh.
If I understand the question correctly, if we borrow money with this, we'll be tapped out for our borrowing thing. I actually did the calculations of this today. Give me 1 second, Councillor Patterson. So with municipalities and debts, you get something called the liability servicing limit. For the town of Smithers, it's based off of our municipal revenues, which is $17 million, just shy of $18 million. So our servicing limit is 25% of that. So that would be our annual liability servicing limit means the amount of debt payments we could have would be 4.5 million. Obviously, that has some large financial impacts, but that is our servicing limit. Our servicing limit for 2024 was $342,000. We've incurred some new liabilities in 2025, which was through equipment financing, vacuum truck, multi-use tractors, fire truck. And for the 2026 financial plan, I've the snow blower for the relocation of the snow dump and the garbage truck. So that brings our total servicing cost to just over $1 million, leaving us with like $3.4 million in available servicing room. So we do have quite a bit of capacity if needed for generally those cases. One of the unique things too is Smithers' financial state, especially with the case of the library, is recently in 2025, there's a thing called the approval limit, which is where a municipality can borrow without having to go to electoral approval. It was previously about 5% of revenue, which would bring it up to about like just shy of $900,000. So we would be kind of generally over that, but that got bumped to 10% in 2025. So the town of Smithers is able to borrow, like, as long as we're below this limit, we can borrow with kind of a cent free without kind of a voting thing. So yeah, we have relatively low debt. So there's quite a capacity going forward for this. Sorry, that was a bit of a nuance kind of off of that. But there is like, we're relatively low, like with, coming into 2025 with 342,000, quite below our 4.4 million limit. So we do have quite a bit of borrowing capacity if needed.
Thank you, Mr. Welsh. Council, is there someone willing to put a motion on the floor? Councillor Ray.
I'll move that we go with option 3 for the library renovation construction.
Does anyone want to speak to that anymore? Or okay. All in favor of the motion on the floor? Okay, and opposed? Okay, so that carries with Councillor Leonard, Councillor Elliott, Councillor Raven, Councillor Bukema, Councillor Ray in favor, and Councillor Patterson and Mayor Attrell opposed. Thanks, everyone. And now we're going to move to the fire truck. Ms. LeBlanc has brought up the slide already. Okay, anyone want to start us off? Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Chair Bukema. I just want to say thank you to Mr. Welsh. We talked about this at the last Finance Committee meeting, and I was happy to see it come back. I think this is a perfect example of what the RBA was intended for. And I hope that we don't have a bad fire season, but I'm happy to see that emergency support services is a priority, including the fire truck. Thank you.
Councillor Ray.
Yeah, I actually spoke last time at seeing it be okay from debt. But seeing the additional information and how it's going to strengthen the fire reserve, equipment reserve. I think actually I'm in favor of going with the RBA for this.
Thanks, Councillor Ray. Councillor Raven.
And one thing that I really like too is we're really showing the breadth of RBA. As Mayor Ashel had mentioned earlier, we've done Princess Street. We've done improvements across the street. We've done paving. We've done some water lines, the library, and now with fire rescue being involved, I think we're really showing how impactful RBA really is and all the different needs we have in the community. So I support this coming from IBA or RBA.
Councillor Leonard.
I am in support of funding this through RBA.
Councillor Elliott.
I as well support funding through the RBA.
You're good? Okay. Mr. Welsh.
Thank you, Chair Bukema. One thing Chief DeBreeze brought to my attention, I really like this approach, is with the procurement of fire trucks, it normally has a long kind of procurement time, and correct me if I'm wrong, Chief, but when we purchase a fire truck out this way, we'll be committing to and being able to pay for it in full. So it allows us to fix our price in a certain period of time. So we're able to have potentially some big cost savings as we can commit to when we buy it in 2026 with a fixed price, and then don't have to worry about any future cost increases. So it kind of hedges our risk and locks in a fixed price for this, along with, I think this is a great use of RBA funds. There was some of the discussion last time where I went back, and this is actually one I thought was a great suggestion. So I'm glad to hear the discussion on this.
Chief DeVries, my apologies.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Bukema. Just to follow up on what Mr. Welsh said, I believe pre-COVID, a down payment was all that was required to secure your kind of final costing, and they had so many cost overruns. Now, most manufacturers no longer will guarantee a price unless you pay for the whole unit upfront.
Thank you for that information. Councillor Ray.
I was just going to move. I'll move that the committee recommend to council that the fire rescue truck be purchased using RBA funds.
Anyone want to speak to that? If not, call for the question. All in favor? Okay, and opposed? Okay, and that carries unanimously. Okay, I think those were the decisions we had to make this evening. And then I spoke with Mr. Welsh earlier this afternoon. We can now come back to the consolidated budget. The package we received for tonight. It's basically a conglomeration of our first two finance meetings. I'm not sure if there are a whole lot of questions, but Mr. Welsh said he is open to taking questions if anyone has some. But otherwise, like I said, it's just a conglomeration of the decisions we made at our first two finance meetings. Pardon me? Is it okay to do this first or not? And then we'll come back to that? Yeah. Okay. I'll make sure I come back to that. Does anyone have any questions? Councillor Ray?
I apologize for not looking into the 5-year numbers, but a couple of spots it's mentioned that we reduced council contingency to 3,000 for this year. Just want to make sure that it was carried forward at 3,000 as well. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Ray. Anyone else? And otherwise, I'm going to direct council back to page 3 of agenda item 5.1. And there are 3 recommendations that are staring us at the top of that report from Mr. Welsh. Yeah, we passed the second and the third already. We just need someone willing to pass. Okay. Councillor Leonard moves that we pass recommendation number 1 for paragraph 1.
Just a question
Yes.
for clarity. Should it be as amended this evening since it's different than it appears in the report? So just reflecting the decisions that were made tonight.
Yeah, like the 2 decisions we made tonight are in paragraph 2 and 3.
Right, so
Yeah.
the decision in paragraph 2 would reflect the hybrid model.
Oh, yeah, because it doesn't identify.
I think the way it's worded, it does.
Yeah, because it
Um,
talks about 1.5 million from RBA and 1.5 million from long-term borrowing. Yeah.
So yeah, the second and the third recommended or portion of the resolutions adhere to the decisions council just made. So we'll assume those are to be the recommendations that council made. And then the first part of the recommendation is talking about the 5-year financial plan as proposed. And in the report, it does propose as council has recommended. So if you just move that first part, we'll just basically remove the ends and we have the full recommendation moving forward.
So Councillor Leonard moved paragraph 1. All in favor? Okay, and that carries unanimously. Then I think we have covered everything we need to cover this evening. Is there someone willing to move adjournment of this finance committee meeting? Councillor Raven, all in favor? Okay, that carries unanimously. And I think I'm going to turn the floor over to Mayor Attrell now.